You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
Exactly what we all voted for ex-MAGA faithful slams Trump for broken promise, based on an article by Kathleen Culleton. The president declared war by mood swing. The power is not the pundit class. The source gives away its own weakness. It wraps an escalation of U.S. force around a swirl of reactions, jokes, and social media eye rolls. That is the misdirection. The people with actual power are Donald Trump, the Defense Department under Pete Hegseth, and the U.S. military apparatus that carried out the strikes in the first place. Everyone else is commentary on a decision already made. Trump did not describe a distant problem. He announced that the ceasefire in Iran was over after fresh attacks and said he no longer wanted to deal with Iran. That is executive authority speaking plainly. Whatever label was attached to the arrangement, it was fragile, and the White House was the only actor with the capacity to keep it alive or blow it up. 3 weeks of peace, then a televised exit. The source says the peace deal was 3 weeks old when Trump declared he collapsed to the NATO summit in Turkey. That matters. This was not an unforeseen accident or diplomatic misunderstanding. It was a short-lived pause punctured by the same old logic: bomb first, declare patience exhausted, then let the press and the market-adjacent commentators sort through the wreckage. Retired Admiral James Stavridis warned that the U.S. had launched pretty significant strikes, which is another way of saying the administration had already crossed the line before the pundit class noticed the floor moving. By the time business journalist Niraj Bajpai said regional calm had evaporated, the political choice had already been made. The reporting frames the moment as drift. It was not drift, it was escalation. Green sees the trap because the trap is obvious. Marjorie Taylor Greene, of all people, grasped the contradiction more clearly than the professional foreign policy set did. Her sarcasm cuts through the usual patriotic fog that Trump campaigned against forever wars, and now his own administration looks indistinguishable from the machinery that manufactures them. Her attack on Hegseth is crude, but the target is correct. If the Defense Department is heading to Israel to ask for advice while the United States is striking Iran, then the chain of command is not confused. It is complicit. That does not make Green a reliable anti-war voice. It means the contradiction has become so blatant that even a former MAGA loyalist can see it. When the people who built the machine start mocking the machine is already consuming its own legitimacy. The article's framing softens deliberate harm. The source treats this as a cloud of reactions, outrage, skepticism, confusion, another internet post. That is a familiar trick. It converts a decision by the most powerful office in the country into a swirl of vibes. It turns bombing into a content cycle. It makes deliberate escalation look like a communications problem. That framing is convenient for the administration and for the national security establishment around it. If the story is cast as chaos, then no one has to own the decision. If the story is cast as a bad-tempered president improvising at a summit, then the institutions that enable those strikes disappear behind the spectacle. That is how power launders itself through noise. War by improvisation is still war. Trump's line that he does not want to deal with Iran anymore because their scum is not a policy doctrine. It is a permission structure for arbitrary violence. That is what makes this dangerous. When the president personalizes a conflict, accountability gets replaced by impulse, and impulse gets defended as strength. The real pattern here is not just volatility. It is the normalization of executive war-making as a performance for allies, enemies, and domestic followers at once. The ceasefire is treated as a disposable prop. The military action is treated as background. The commentary is treated as the story. The pattern is authoritarian power wearing a clown mask. This is how deterioration looks in practice. The president announces the end of a ceasefire. The defense establishment executes. The press narrates. The pundits snark. And the public is left to decode whether the government is serious or merely unstable. It is serious. That is the point. The deeper lesson is that authoritarian politics does not always arrive with solemn banners and clean slogans. Sometimes it arrives as contempt, improvisation, and a stream of statements designed to make violence seem unserious. The cruelty is real even when the language is sloppy. The power is real even when the people around it are laughing. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to Roar's story for today's article. With the automated voice of Norman, thanks for listening.